What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going over 5 breakout wide receivers for the 2020 season. I don't know that there's like a set definition for breakout, so here's what I decided to do for this one. I'll pick one wide receiver, like 2, 3 kind of from last season that I think can enter the top 5 this year, 2 flex wide receivers from last year that I think this year will be weekly must starts, just like regardless of the matchup. Guys, you're playing every single week. Doesn't matter who they're going up against. And then 2 more players who were mostly just like bench options, maybe even on free agency at times last season, that I think can become weekly starters for us this season. That way we touch on, different areas of the draft and we kind of have a set definition of what we're looking for. So we'll start things off with a wide receiver 2 from last season. I think will enter the top 5. And that's Michael Pittman Jr. If you follow me last season, you know I loved him then as well. And while he had a good season, like a really, really solid season, I think a true breakout is coming this year. Jonathan Taylor, obviously going to be the focal point of this offense. That's not really something we can question. He's going to get a ton of workload on the ground, plenty of workload in the receiving game. But there's plenty of opportunity to go around after him. And Pittman is the clear alpha in the passing game. He was dominant against both man and zone coverage last season. He shredded press coverage. He's 6'4", so he's obviously a red zone threat for the Colts. And, he's just like the most reliable every down wide receiver they have. I think Paris Campbell is a fantastic wide receiver. I think he can have a good season from the slot. But he's also had a brutal time, like a really difficult time staying healthy over his 3-year career so far. He's only played in 15 games, doesn't have that much production in those games. Like, we've seen glimpses. I think he's good, but we can't really rely on him. Then they went out, they drafted Alec Pierce. Also a receiver I think is good, very athletic wide receiver, but he's really just like a deep ball specialist. He's not someone who's going to consistently command targets, 3rd down and 5. They're not looking for Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is the guy they're going to scheme deep looks to occasionally, not someone they're consistently looking at short and intermediate. That is all going to Pittman. He's going to be the first and second read on a ton of dropbacks for Matt Ryan. And hey, Matt Ryan has, he's supported very fantasy relevant wide receivers in the past. And I just want to remind everyone that, even if you don't think Matt Ryan, I kind of fall into the group that, I don't think Matt Ryan's as good as he used to be. But even if you think that, you got to remember how Dust, Rivers, and Wentz have looked these last 2 seasons. I mean, Wentz had his moments last year where he was solid, but he made some truly horrendous reads that cost them production at times. It just, these turnovers, these, open looks that are just not being seen by him cost them a lot of production. They left a lot of production on the field last season, and it also prevented the Colts from truly airing it out at times because they knew they don't want to do that, right? Just give it to Jonathan Taylor, let him do work. Now going to Matt Ryan, he's not going to self-combust like Wentz used to do. And like I said, he's a huge upgrade that's also supported very fantasy relevant wide receivers in the past, really high-end seasons. I think this season, Michael Pittman takes that step forward. I think he's going to be a top 10 receiver for sure. I think he can be top 5, which would be, of course, a big step up from 25th in points per game last season. As for some flex wide receivers, I think will become weekly must starts. Let's start off with Darnell Mooney. He was wide receiver 32 in points per game last season. And while he showed just a really, really high ceiling, he wasn't all that consistent. He'd have that spike and then he'd go down for a few weeks to basically nothing. And of course, classic is his best game of the season comes in week 18 when no one was able to play him. No one actually plays in week 18 for fantasy. And if we, remove that game, we only look at the fantasy season. What did he do for us in fantasy? He was actually the wide receiver 37 in points per game. So I'm extremely bullish on him really improving upon that number, jumping into the top 20 this season. I think he's honestly currently one of the most undervalued wide receivers in fantasy. I think Adam Thielen kind of pushed him for that, but you can't really say Adam Thielen's a breakout because he's already had phenomenal seasons. But I think Mooney really is. I mean, the 5 games that Allen Robinson missed last season, Mooney had at worst 7 targets. He posted an average stat line of 5 for 78, and then the 1 touchdown in the 5 weeks. That's a 17-week pace of 85 for 1,330 yards, 3.4 touchdowns. That puts him right between Pittman and Keenan Allen for the wide receiver 15 overall last season. But remember, It's not just that Allen Robinson is gone and that Mooney's a clear target. It's that the offense was awful last season and they refused to use play action, even though Fields is phenomenal in play action. Thus far in his career, he's proven to be really, really good in that area. And Mooney excels in the deep passing game. Like, it is a perfect combination of two players to where Fields is exceptional in play action and Mooney is awesome on deep routes. And the Bears looked at that last season and were like, nope, we're not going to call 9 routes. We're not going to call corner routes for Mooney, even though that's like your best combination. We're going to do that like 14% of the time. No, we're going to do curls. We're going to do slants. We're going to do flat routes, like everything really close to the line of scrimmage, take away any sort of upside. Like, it was horrible to watch. And it made no sense given the talent on their roster. Matt Nagy's just like an all-time donkey. And, literally any coach is going to be a significant upgrade over him. So combine that with, like I said before, the fact that they replaced Allen Robinson with nothing this offseason. Definitely not talent that's as good as Allen Robinson is. I mean, I would expect north of 150 targets from Mooney, but here's the thing. When I do out the projections, like if I wanted to, I could give Mooney 150 targets very easily. But I don't have to because I have him ranked like 10 wide receiver spots ahead of ADP, even on a conservative 128. And I actually think in the next push, it's going to be 134 targets. But even being super conservative, way lower than I actually expect him to get, I'm still just like posting him in the rankings way, way higher than ADP. So he has room to go up from there. And so if I'm under projecting him on purpose and he's still 10 wide receiver spots behind where he's going, that is a phenomenal pick. You need to be getting Mooney as much as you can this season. I think he's going to be a weekly must start, and it will not matter who he's going up against. Someone else that you are going to be starting every week is DeVonta Smith. Had a great rookie season, but still finished the wide receiver 40 in points per game. But the underlying metrics were just so much better than that wide receiver 40 in half PPR points per game finish. I mean, it's so obvious that he is going to be a star in the NFL. Even at 170 pounds, everyone loves to push at the weight, but I mean, it's ridiculous. Don't really look at weight unless the dude's like 140, right? But even 170 pounds, he was used as the Eagles' X wide receiver. He was always dealing with, primary coverage from the top corner of the other team. He was pressed nearly 20% of the time. Like, if you told a lot of people that was going to happen, they wouldn't have even considered drafting him last season because everyone was off him because of the weight. And what does he do? He responds as a rookie, beating man coverage at a 77th percentile clip, beats press at an 84th percentile clip, and proved that he's already one of the best route runners in the NFL and just a truly elite separator. And for those of you worried about, A.J. Brown, please do not be. The Eagles ranked dead last in the NFL with just a 50% pass rate last season, and they threw the ball less than 30 times per game. That was not their initial game plan. That is not what they want to do this season. But when you drop back and do what they did last season, and you see the results, they were terrible to start the year because you have DeVonta Smith, really, really good, but a rookie in DeVonta Smith. And then next to him, it's Quez Watkins, it's Jalen Reagor, it's Greg Ward. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Like, of course that wasn't going to work, especially in, Hurts' like first full season to start. It's obviously not going to work. It didn't work. They had to run the ball. But they don't want to do that anymore. They want to throw the ball. That's why they brought in A.J. Brown. So even though, of course, A.J. Brown is better than DeVonta Smith, I don't think you should really debate that. I think maybe long term, when DeVonta Smith hits his ceiling, which could happen this next season, but likely will happen in years like 3, 4, 5, kind of that range. There's like true ceiling. Maybe then we'll say that he's better than A.J. Brown. But for right now, A.J. Brown's still better. But I don't think that matters. A.J. Brown's a top 7 wide receiver talent, and I think that DeVonta Smith can enter inside the top like 15 wide receiver talents in the NFL. And so who cares if A.J. Brown's a little bit better? If they're going to throw the ball more, they're going to be more efficient. If DeVonta Smith is never going up against primary coverage, he is never being double teamed, he is never being the primary focus on defense, and he's just going to progress as a player in year 2, I mean, the sky's the limit. Like, he could have a phenomenal season this year, and his upside is significantly higher than the public is assuming because he's the 2. People don't like to take 2s early, even though we've seen plenty of times multiple wide receivers on teams can be relevant, which is a great transition into our next player, Russell Gage. Look at what the Bucs were able to do last season. The Bucs had twice as many passing touchdowns as Atlanta 85 more passing yards per game, and the offense was able to support Antonio Brown, 14.3 half PPR points per game. Mike Evans, 14.1 half PPR points per game. Chris Godwin, 13.8 half PPR points per game. That is the wide receiver 7, 8, and 9. 3 mid to low end wide receiver ones. So don't tell me that if you have another really good player on a team that you can't have another production. Now, obviously, like, I'm not saying that the Eagles are just kind of going back against DeVonta Smith. I'm not saying that the Eagles are going to be as good as the Bucs. But we have seen plenty of times that 2 wide receivers on a team can be very relevant, and especially when this is like the best duo in the NFL, or maybe not the best duo in the NFL. It's a top 3 duo in the NFL, in my opinion. Yeah, really, really high upside for that. But going back to what I was talking about with Russell Gage here, initially, when we were talking about, I believe it was last week's Risers video, and I was saying, like, we got Russell Gage on all of our underdog teams for a long time when he was going way too late. Now he's going earlier. I believe he's the wide receiver 38 off the board. And now it's like, oh, we should pump the brakes. Everyone drafting him now is getting even a way worse value than us. Let's stop drafting him and take other players now that are even better ADPs, because if he actually hits, we have him at the best ADP, our teams will beat them. But honestly, looking at things more, like, just keep drafting him because he's still undervalued. I don't think it can really climb that much more because people are not going to take Russell Gage in like the top 30 wide receivers, but they probably should be. Like I said, 3 wide receiver ones on Tampa Bay last season. Gronk is retired. AB's never coming back. Godwin is coming off a torn ACL, probably not going to be healthy to start the season. Plus Brady went out and specifically asked for Russell Gage. The upside here is phenomenal. So I'm still going to be all in on Russell Gage's new ADP. I still have him projected well above, I don't know how much above, but well above his current ADP. I think we just need to keep drafting him because, if he went out there and he was a top 15 wide receiver, I wouldn't be shocked. Slot receiver with Tom Brady, especially requested. A good wide receiver talent. A better schedule than he had last season, especially for slot receivers. It's just everything is pointing to a really good season from Gage. Very low risk, very high upside. Makes too much sense. Draft him. Final wide receiver we'll go over today. KJ Osborn, which is probably not a name you guys expected to see, and obviously has the lowest upside of anyone on this list, but also coming off the board as a wide receiver 69. So of course he's going to have the lowest upside of any player. Now I still think Jefferson, phenomenal mid first round pick. Thielen, one of, if not the best wide receiver picks on drafts right now. But Osborn set up to have a really nice season too, under this new pass-heavy scheme that the Vikings are putting together. And he's a fantastic pick for the wide receiver 69. Now, not many people remember he had 82 targets last season as part of the Vikings' really consolidated target share. Their distribution was crazy. 167 for Jefferson, 95 for Thielen, 82 for Osborn, and then 15 for GT Westbrook. They only use 3 wide receivers. They'll mix in the running backs. They'll mix in, Irv Smith. But Conklin's gone, so Irv Smith can take a lot of those targets. But the point is they're very consolidated. They're not bringing in, 4 or 5 wide receivers, rotating those guys in. It's just going to be those 3. And so when we look at this offense and we think about, how pass heavy they're going to be this season, it's not crazy to project Osborn for, close to or maybe even surpass 100 targets. And we never want to draft wide receivers to be handcuffs, but I think that Osborn can be a flex wide receiver while everyone's healthy. But if Thielen were to get injured, he'd immediately be a wide receiver too. Just look at last season. We saw Thielen get hurt. He effectively missed all of week 13. He was a decoy in one of the weeks. So basically, week 13 on, Thielen wasn't on the field. He was barely in the field. It was 31 total snaps over all those weeks. So Osborn became a full-time wide receiver. And in that time, he averaged 11.4 half PPR points per game over those 6 weeks, which is exactly the same as Michael Pittman Jr. last season. He was good. He was a very good wide receiver last season when Thielen was out. And last season was this first year in the NFL where he actually received a target. He didn't have, I believe, any targets in his rookie season. In year 2, really steps it up. Going to be the clear 3 this season. Going to have good numbers in this new offense, even while everyone's healthy. But if someone were to get hurt, that's a lot of upside that he's going to have. And it's coming off the board as the wide receiver 69. That's such a cheap price tag for someone with that much upside. And, it's pretty much a guarantee he's going to beat that ADP. And he could be, a starter for you. Just someone that you have a bye week. you have an injury, someone you can throw in there and be like, oh, he's probably going to produce and will still have a high weekly ceiling. Really, really good pick as wide receiver 69 off the board. So those are 5 potential breakout wide receivers this season. I'll be back tomorrow to go over the latest ADP changes of the last week. Then Monday, of course, another episode of Mock Draft Monday. I posted the auction price table on the site probably. So I'm working on it now. I already have PPR done. I'm going to be filling out standard half PPR. When you're watching this, it is likely up. If it is not up, it's going to be there very soon. And don't worry, it's going to update automatically with the rankings. So don't worry about it being like, not updated frequently. I update the rankings like all the time. That auction page is going to have like, what price you should bid for players. So yeah, that should be up. I'm working on a write-up for those of you in Superflex leagues. I'm working on a new ranking set for those of you in 3 wide receiver leagues. So a lot of new information getting posted to the website soon to go along with all the information that's already on there. So make sure you're checking back frequently if you do have access. And if you don't have access, then I have no idea what you're waiting for. Sign up for All In, get access to the entire season, more information than the vast majority of sites for a fraction of the cost. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.